7 News with Angela Cox.
Good afternoon, I'm Angela Cox. Sydney has a new COVID cluster centred around Croydon. Right now the outbreak is at 6 but is expected to grow. It means restrictions for New Year's Eve have now tightened further. A worried Premier announced a total of 18 new cases today, those 6 in Croydon, 9 linked to the existing Northern Beaches cluster, another 3 under investigation, 2 in Wollongong and another in northern Sydney. Let's go straight to Robert Avadia now. Rob, this is a worrying spread. The Premier's called it the Croydon cluster. What do we know about infections there?
Slowly for the past few days, they've only ever linked anything to the Avalon cluster. Now they can call it the Croydon cluster. It's something that they have been dreading but also expecting. As you say, 6 cases here. It began with just the one person named yesterday as from the inner west. Contact tracers got a hold of that person, checked out who they had been in contact with. It turns out some 34 members of their extended family over several Christmas luncheons and gathering over the Christmas period. After one person that became 6, those 6 are isolating now, having contracted COVID-19. As I said, 34 are also in isolation.
So that Croydon Park group had a number of family gatherings over a number of days. Over that period of time, there were about 34 close contacts identified, but not on the one day.
The Croydon cluster demonstrates what happens when there are larger family gatherings and how it only takes one person in that family gathering to give it to everybody else in the family. And we want to see a reduction of that. We don't want New Year's Eve to be the cause of a super spreader.
And Rob, fears about New Year's Eve mean new restrictions now beginning at midnight tonight. Talk us through what changes.
Correct. Well, this is very much policy on the run, but it has to be given the changing dynamics of a pandemic, and Gladys Berejiklian says she makes no apologies for that. What was 50 outdoors has now been limited to only 30 people for any sort of gathering, and indoors for Greater Sydney, that encompasses the Sydney area, Nepean, Blue Mountains, Wollongong and Central Coast, that is now restricted from what was 10 people inside a household to just 5. Now, Gladys Berejiklian and Kerry Chan say that they can only make that policy and make determinations every morning depending on what numbers that come in. It's likened somewhat to a speed limit on a road, I guess, where you can't guarantee that a crash will not happen at 60 kilometres an hour, but at least that limit is better than the alternate scenario of letting things go at 100 kilometres an hour. So they know it's not foolproof. They are expecting further cases from the Croydon cluster to come to light in the following days, and for numbers to bounce around in the next few weeks before hopefully stabilising. Angela?
OK, Robert Avadia, thank you. There's been an extraordinary turnout for testing in Wollongong. These pictures came into the newsroom after news of 2 positive cases in the area. Contact tracers don't know yet how the virus has turned up there, but are urging anyone who's been in the Illawarra Shoalhaven region over the last 2 weeks to monitor symptoms and get tested.
It is essential that we have very, very high testing rates around the Wollongong area. This case from Wollongong was in a number of venues and locations whilst infectious.
Venues on the alert list include the St Nectarios Greek Orthodox Church and the Holy Cross Greek Orthodox Church. The third test will still go ahead at the SCG. Medical chiefs are confident a crowd of 25,000 people can be COVID safe despite outdoor events currently being limited to just 30. Cameron Price has more details.
Good afternoon. Both Cricket Australia and the state government say they're planning for the stands here at the SCG to be half full after confirmation the pink test will go ahead here in Sydney next week. The latest advice from health authorities that a socially distanced crowd of close to 25,000 is deemed safe, despite today's jump in case numbers here in New South Wales.
The best health advice to us is that 50% capacity of that venue in an outdoor setting is safer than being in a household.
We are looking over the plans as we speak to ensure that we can strengthen all elements.
It's just been a massive team effort to make sure that we conduct and can complete the schedule safely. Playing in front of home fans is always really special. I think everyone's prepared to, do whatever it takes.
The announcement that the test will go ahead welcomed relief for the McGrath Foundation.
It wouldn't be the same if it wasn't at the SCG, so we're just incredibly grateful.
Preparations now underway to move the broadcast suite from the MCG north and to put the finishing touches on the SCG wicket.
Surely the cricket can go ahead, be televised, but with no crowds. No one needs to be attending that match. It's not necessary.
This decision is more based on emotion than outbreak management.
The players, meanwhile, will remain in Melbourne until early next week and enter an effective quarantine zone once they arrive in New South Wales. Negotiations underway for the players to receive a special exemption to travel to Queensland for the Gabba test that begins on January 15.
The body of a man's been discovered at the back of a massage business in Hornsby. He was found in the bin room just after lunch. The area is now a crime scene while police investigate. They haven't yet revealed how he died. There's been an alarming escalation of gun violence in Western Sydney with children caught up in a series of shootings. 2 family homes were targeted in drive-by attacks last night. Natasha Squarey has more from Parramatta Court.
A 27-year-old man charged over one of 2 shootings overnight claims he's innocent and says he was only driving near one of the crime scenes because he was trying to find his friends to have some fun. Ahmed Chauk is accused of driving a getaway car involved in this shooting in South Granville around 7 last night. Up to 20 bullets were blasted into the front of the home. A young family was inside, but thankfully no one was hit.
Yeah, here shooting. And I started people screaming here.
Shortly after, a blue Audi was found torched nearby. It's then alleged the accused was involved in a car crash in a second getaway car and was taken into custody. It was around the same time when a Guildford home connected to Mr Chauk was shot up. A couple and 3 children were inside, but not hurt. A second Audi was found torched minutes later in Chester Hill, and the gunman slipped away.
Both properties had families inside, involving some younger children, so it's very concerning that children have been subjected to offences involving firearms, especially them being shot with into the house.
Investigators believe they're dealing with a local drug war and have called in extra officers to patrol the area. Late this afternoon, Mr Chauk was granted bail.
Health experts are warning against a plan to let Australians returning home from overseas skip hotel quarantine if they've received a COVID vaccination. Live to Rob Scott in Canberra for us. Rob, doctors say that shouldn't be allowed to happen until most Australians have had the jab.
Yes, that's right, Ange. They say that there are far too many unknowns when it comes to both the virus and the vaccine, and that bypassing hotel quarantine at this stage is too risky. Now, while the federal government says that mandatory quarantine is the best defence we have against international travellers spreading COVID here, the Health Department has confirmed it's examining the concept of an international immunisation certificate, and what it says are potential alternate entry and quarantine arrangements for returning Australians who may have been vaccinated. But experts say mandatory hotel quarantine should remain in place until at least 80% of the Australian population has been vaccinated.
Just because someone has received a vaccine, you don't know whether the vaccine was active, you don't know whether it was administered properly or at the right times, and you may not know whether it even happened at all. Maybe the certificate was forged.
Quarantine has been an essential part of our success so far, and the vaccine is not a silver bullet.
His chief medical officer says while he's looking closely at their idea of a vaccine passport, at this stage there is no change to the system. So vaccinated or not, people coming into Australia will still have to quarantine for 14 days.
OK, Rob, thank you. New South Wales is copping a wet and wild end to 2020 with heavy rain triggering flash flooding in parts of the state. In Sydney, the lockdown northern beaches experienced the worst of it, leaving homes inundated and roads shut. The worst of it isn't over. We're in for a drenching on New Year's Eve and more thunderstorm activity.
New Year's Eve in New South Wales is looking quite humid and unsettled, so if you are celebrating indoors, it might not be such a bad thing.
The new year will be off to a soggy start too, with a wetter than average forecast from January to March. Restrictions tighten for New Year's Eve as Sydney rides a new COVID outbreak. Still to come in Sydney's afternoon news. More on urgent testing calls as a new cluster in the inner west puts another handbrake on celebrations. The latest is ahead. Plus, a stolen vehicle hits cars and almost ploughs through a Maryland's house. But where is the driver? An incredible rescues and a desperate search the moment another major earthquake rocks Croatia. You're watching 7's 4pm Sydney News. This is the view from Parramatta, where right now it is 22 degrees. If you've just joined us, our top story this afternoon, Sydney has a new COVID cluster centred around Croydon. There are 6 cases, all members of the same extended family, with the source of their infection still under investigation. A worried Premier announced 18 new cases in total, leading to tighter restrictions which will come into effect at midnight tonight. For Greater Sydney, the limit on outdoor New Year's Eve events has been reduced from 50 people to 30 people. And for indoor events, no more than 5 people allowed in your home, including children. We're seeing long lines for testing too in Wollongong after 2 cases from the same household were reported there. The source is still unclear. We'll keep you updated on this story. A driver in a stolen car has rampaged through Maryland, ending up in the front yard of a home. The destruction began when police tried to pull over the stolen Toyota, calling off a chase because the driver was so erratic. Minutes later, it hit a car with a woman and her son inside before crashing through a brick fence of the house into a tree and a parked Ford. The driver fled the scene but left a badly injured passenger behind. A Melbourne woman has faced court charged with driving at 2 police officers accused of injuring them so badly they both spent the night in hospital. Louisa Cheatley has more.
The 27-year-old woman is facing a number of charges, including 4 counts of intentionally exposing an emergency worker to risk while driving. Police were called to do a welfare check on the woman in a vehicle at a McDonald's yesterday when she allegedly drove at 2 young officers, pinning a policeman to a tree and running over the legs of a female officer. Both were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
They're both in good spirits. One member's going to have some very severe bruising to his legs and the other member's got some fractures in her foot.
But that wasn't the end of the woman's rampage. It's alleged she then led police on a wild chase. Dashcam footage captured her driving dangerously through traffic, narrowly missing innocent drivers. The pursuit lasted for almost 30 kilometres. Police allege she reached speeds of up to 170 kilometres per hour before eventually crashing into a tree after police deployed stop sticks. But she then fled again, this time climbing fences and breaking into 2 homes. At the first, she asked for a glass of water before the homeowner told her to leave. That's when she entered a second home next door and tried to hide before police apprehended and arrested her.
I went straight inside to see what was going on. I got as far as, I think about a third of the way in through the living room when the police came in the back door. She emerged from the kitchen about the same time as they came in through the door, and it was a mad flurry of activity. She was hysterical, screaming and begging not to be hurt.
The Fairfield woman is also facing charges of intentionally causing serious injury, reckless conduct, endangering life and assault-related charges. She's appearing at court today.
There's a desperate search for survivors underway in Croatia after a 6.4 magnitude earthquake rocked the central part of the country. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfield is following the story. Hugh, at least 7 people are dead.
Among the dead in Croatia, a 12-year-old girl, at least 20 people injured. Locals describing the earthquake as worse than a war. As the earthquake hit, the streets filled with dust. And it soon became clear people were trapped in the rubble. Beneath a collapsed wall, a car and a young boy. Firefighters later managed to free his father from the crushed vehicle before he is reunited with his son. Croatia and the Balkans have been hit by tremors all week, but this was the strongest so far, 6.3 on the Richter scale. It struck while TV cameras were live. Felt in the Slovenian parliament too. followed by more aftershocks. Much of the damage in a town just outside the Croatian capital Zagreb, where new buildings managed to withstand the shaking, but it was felt as far away as southern Austria. A Slovenian nuclear power plant was temporarily shut down as a precaution. A huge rescue, recovery and clean-up operation now underway. The aftershocks have only continued across Croatia and the region. The operation to try and treat some of those injured has been complicated by the pandemic and damage to hospitals, with a baby being born in a tent outside one of those hospitals in the aftermath of the quake.
The fashion world is remembering pioneering designer Pierre Cardin. The French mogul broke the industry mould, offering designer clothes to the masses. He was the first to sell collections in department stores in the late 1950s, and also the first to license perfumes, accessories and even food. While his approach attracted criticism within the industry, it's now commonplace in the fashion world. Pierre Cardin died aged 98. Coming up in 7's afternoon news, a car smashes into a Werrington home, leaving a balcony hanging. What caused the wild ride? Plus the arrest of an accused drag racer, where police found him. And pressure rising, calls for change after Australia's horror second test loss to India. A car has smashed into a home in the city's west, leaving a balcony dangling precariously. The driver lost control at Werrington, crashing through garbage bins and then into the front of a house. While the driver escaped injury, the property suffered significant damage to its entryway. Police suspect wet roads may have been a factor in the crash. An alleged drag racer's been arrested, accused of fleeing the scene of a crash which left a man fighting for life. Police took a 20-year-old man into custody this morning after 24 hours on the run. Christy Mayer has the latest.
Major crash detectives have had a breakthrough after a drag race ended in a horror crash at Mulgrave late on Monday night. This morning, police arrested a 20-year-old man from Narre Warren, who is believed to be the driver of the Toyota Camry seen racing the ute, speeding and weaving through traffic on the Monash freeway before fleeing the scene seconds after the ute driver lost control. Police believe the drivers of the two cars were drag racing inbound from the Eastlink overpass when the ute driver swerved to avoid a barrier and overcorrected, crossing 4 lanes and smashing into a pylon, the force of impact causing the vehicle to flip. The Camry driver is accused of continuing on, leaving 2 men trapped in the crumpled wreck. The 18-year-old passenger incredibly suffered minor injuries, but the 20-year-old driver remains critical, fighting for his life in the Alfred Hospital. The Camry driver showed no emotion as police drove him in for questioning today, just shielded his face from our camera. At this stage, the interrogation is still underway and no charges have been laid.
Woolworths has pulled a bad batch of milk from its shelves in some parts of New South Wales after customers complained of a foul taste. Shoppers hit social media to warn others their 2 and 3 litre containers of milk tasted of chemicals. Despite the unpleasant flavour, Woolworths is assuring customers the milk is safe. The affected product has a use-by date of the 4th of January and has been removed from stores. Unhappy customers can request a refund. Now, Sean Sowerby's here with sport, and Sean, there's plenty of pressure on our batsmen after yesterday's loss to India.
There sure is, Ange, but Pat Cummins has called for calm and backed the Aussie batsmen to rediscover their magic touch. Andrew McCormack is at the MCG.
Well, after a disappointing Boxing Day test, it was back to work for several Aussie stars here at the MCG. Captain Tim Payne and Marnus Labuschagne, just a couple who returned to the nets here in Melbourne. Steve Smith was also there rolling the arm over, but took a break with the bat in hand today. Ricky Ponting labelled the Aussie batsman as fragile and tentative against the Indian bowling attack so far this series, and we can expect a much more aggressive mindset from the Australian squad for the remaining 2 tests, especially from the likes of Steve Smith, who has managed just 10 runs so far this series.
I think we all hold such high standards, and that's because they do seem to go and score runs just about every time they bat. But the reality is it's only been 2 test matches. Steve's been a champion for a dozen years or so. So absolutely no stress at all.
Australia will bring in the new year in Melbourne. They'll train here at the MCG this weekend before heading to Sydney. Just 3 days out from the start of that third test, David Warner set to finally be allowed to rejoin his teammates as soon as tomorrow. Australia are also finding themselves a little bit lighter in the back pocket after the second test. They will find 40% of their match fee for a slow over rate.
Thanks, Andrew. The Sydney Thunder have sent another warning shot to the rest of the Big Bash teams after crushing the Melbourne Stars by 75 runs last night. English import Alex Hales put on a show, smashing the Thunder's fastest ever half-century on his way to 71 of just 29 balls.
Finally get that, real match-winning contribution, which is what you want from your overseas players. So it's nice to get that under the belt.
The Thunder also hit a team record 219 runs as Chris Green took 4 wickets. And for the second game in a row, the Sixers left it late with West Indies captain Jason Holder rescuing them with 16 off the final over against the Renegades.
Straight up, takes on mid, it's gone. Decent hit, and it is gone.
The Sixers won by 2 wickets with 1 ball to spare. And that win keeps the Sixers on top of the Big Bash ladder, with the Thunder hot on their heels in second. Tonight, the Hobart Hurricanes take on the Brisbane Heat from the Gabba, live and free right here on 7. Manchester United has jumped up to second on the English Premier League ladder after Alexander Lacazette scored just 29 seconds after coming on off the bench as Arsenal defeated Brighton 1-0, which is Arsenal's second win in a row. Meanwhile, West Brom is rooted to the bottom of the table after losing 5-0 to Leeds. And with own goals like this, it's not difficult to see why. The Milwaukee Bucks have set a new NBA record for three-pointers. A total of 30 was scored as they cruised to a 47-point win over the Miami Heat. By the end of the game, 12 players had scored from beyond the arc.
There's the 30 that I predicted.
And the Philadelphia 76ers could take a few tips, shooting at just 27% in their first half against the Toronto Raptors. But Joel Embiid turned it around, helping the 76ers win by 7 points. American baseball selectors have been spotted scouting potential recruits at a Sydney Blue Sox intra-club match. Australian Jake Burns missed out on his first US minor league season with the Cardinals, and that was due to COVID-19. The opportunity gives players like Burns a second chance to get noticed by major league clubs. And that's all for a big afternoon of sport.
OK, thanks so much, Sean. This afternoon's top stories are next as Sydney battles a fresh COVID outbreak. Next, an unexplained cluster in Croydon winds back New Year's plans. The new restrictions from a worried Premier. Plus, firebomb attack in Kingswood. What the victim fears is the trivial reason behind it. He speaks next. And the Sussex podcast. Harry and Meghan debut their new jobs, complete with a message from Archie.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Angela Cox.
To our top story now, and a new COVID outbreak in the inner west suburb of Croydon has changed restrictions just a day out from New Year's Eve. A worried Premier announced a surge in cases today, 18 in total, 6 in the Croydon cluster with no idea yet how they were infected. Robert Avadia has the latest.
Well, for weeks now, I'm sure Sydney's contact tracers have carried with them a sense of relief that at least every case they have been able to trace back to somewhere have all gone in the same direction, all of them linked to the cluster at Avalon on Sydney's northern beaches. That is, of course, until Premier Gladys Berejiklian this morning broke the bad news that here in Croydon another cluster has emerged. Initially one person before it spread to other family members, and today we were told there are now 34 people from the extended family who are now considered close contacts, and all of them are self-isolating.
The Croydon cluster is of concern because there are no direct links at this stage. The health experts are working overtime with all extended family members who are involved so that we can identify all the close contacts.
Croydon is a small suburb in Sydney's inner west. Today, developments are obviously not very welcome. 18 new cases were announced today. That's a large spike, and the fact there is now a second cluster means new restrictions heading into the new year. Outdoor gatherings were capped at 50, now it's 30. And now indoor gatherings across Greater Sydney are limited to 5 per household. Before it was 10. Now, people are also being urged not to visit aged care facilities.
Until at least 11:59 on Wednesday the 6th of January, we're asking that all residential aged care facilities exclude visitors except in those performing essential caring functions and obviously for end of life.
Testing queues have spiked in Wollongong, south of Sydney, after 2 more cases were identified there in the past 24 hours. One of them visited the open-air cinema at Mrs Macquarie's Chair and Buckley's Bar along the Opera House Promenade on Thursday, December 17. Another of 3 cases in the Wollongong area visited the Greek Orthodox Church of the Holy Cross. Last night, we aired pictures of church members paying their respects to the Bible, which is obviously drawing criticism today.
It's probably a good idea not to share saliva at the moment.
It is essential that we have very, very high testing rates around the Wollongong area. This case from Wollongong was in a number of venues and locations whilst infectious. We are concerned that there may have been inadvertent transmission at those settings.
A total of 21 fines have now been issued for people from the Northern Beaches attending a wedding when they were supposed to be in lockdown. That includes the bride, who already had been forced to postpone her wedding from July when COVID shut everything down then. And while the New South Wales government says everybody needs to do the right thing to prevent the spread, right now there is no need to place Greater Sydney into lockdown. 17,000 people were tested in the past 24 hours. Authorities do want those numbers even higher, and no doubt tomorrow they will be, at least here in Croydon.
The SCG test has been given the green light to go ahead with fans starting next week. Sydney's home of cricket already preparing for the annual pink test, and despite new restrictions on outdoor gatherings, the Premier insists it will be safe.
The best health advice to us is that 50% capacity of that venue in an outdoor setting is safer than being in a household.
No one needs to be attending that match. It's not necessary for people to be attending that match.
Players will remain in Melbourne until 3 days prior to the match. A neighbourhood dispute has escalated in Western Sydney, ending with a man's ute being firebombed. His security cameras caught the attack. Police say it was probably over a parking issue. Tom Saker is in Kingswood.
Good afternoon. Police have told the owner of what was this brand new ute that it was probably set on fire because a neighbour didn't like where it was parked. Security vision shows a man stacking rubbish on top of the owner's brand new ute before lighting it on fire. It's believed to use some kind of accelerant as well. After a few seconds, the ute exploded and is now completely destroyed. The man who owns it doesn't want to be identified for fear of reprisal, but said he believes it was his neighbour who has never confronted him about where he parks his car. There are no street signs to suggest the car is parked illegally.
The detective said, this is probably just because you've parked in front of their rubbish bins. And I thought, well, that's so senseless, so pointless.
On Christmas Eve, the same ute was smashed with a chair. Police have seen the security vision and arrested a man 2 days ago, but released him without charge. They've told the owner of the ute that they are still investigating and need more evidence to lay charges.
A man's been found clinging to a marine beacon in waters off the Sunshine Coast during a dramatic late-night rescue mission. The 64-year-old skipper had fallen overboard from his luxury boat, which washed ashore with only his pet dog on board.
Well, a lucky skipper will be reunited with his staffy this afternoon after his boat rolled, separating them near Caloundra. 64-year-old boatie David Simpson fell from his 56-foot vessel, the MV Focus, when he went to secure his dinghy.
Boat rolled, a dinghy hit me and broke a rope, hit me, and I fell about 2.5 metres on the back of the boat, hit some ribs and ended up in the water. Mitch driving away, but he didn't steer very well, did he? That's my dog.
The experienced yachtsman spent 4 hours waiting for help but managed to swim to safety, standing on top of a navigation beacon.
Probably about 6 rescue boats, 3 choppers, and we also had a couple of lifeguards on jet skis. So all up, probably about 10 to 12 assets and with people on board, probably about 20 to 30 people looking for this gentleman.
It was pretty cold and I was starting to shake and, but Yeah, I knew I was safe.
He says 3 cargo ships passed him before he was spotted.
Tried to do a distress signal by flashing the red light on the beacon, and that's what they saw.
Found 2.5 kilometres from his vessel, which ran aground near Caloundra, his staffy Mitch was still on board and the motor running.
As we approached the boat, we could see Mitch, the pup, walking around on the deck, probably confused on what was actually happening. It's one of his best friends, I think, so which is nice that they're both okay.
The Coast Guard tried to salvage the boat this morning, but it had taken on too much water.
8 accused drug traffickers are facing court this afternoon, charged over one of the biggest cannabis crops in South Australia's history. The sophisticated setup was hidden in plain sight, surrounded by market vegetables.
Detectives have already counted more than 5,000 cannabis plants, and they expect the total haul will be double that, with a street value in the millions. A tip-off from a member of the public led them to the property north of Adelaide yesterday morning. They arrested 3 women and 5 men who tried to run. They've been charged with drug trafficking. Police say at least one of them is in Australia illegally, and the Australian Border Force is now working to determine the status of the other suspects.
As you can see, it's very brazen. We're surrounded by glass houses here, and sometimes hiding in plain sight is just the way that people are able to facilitate their criminal enterprises and their criminal industry. We're not ruling out searching more properties. We're not ruling out making more arrests.
The plants vary in size and were being grown both in glass houses and hydroponically. This is the second significant bust in South Australia this year. About 7,000 plants were seized from another farming property just a few kilometres away in February, and police are now investigating if the 2 operations are linked. They'll begin destroying the plants on site this afternoon.
A pilot in his 70s has survived an ultralight plane crash, the aircraft going down about 90 minutes north of Perth. He was forced to bring it down in a dusty field and was then airlifted to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. It's the second crash in 3 days in Perth, a man in his 50s dying when his plane came down on Monday. Incoming US President Joe Biden has slammed Donald Trump's COVID vaccine rollout, saying it's fallen far behind. And now one US state has confirmed the first case of the mutant virus strain that's crippled the UK.
Still in its early weeks, the biggest vaccination effort in US history is already demonstrating discovery of a vaccine is one hurdle, delivery is a whole new headache.
We plan to have enough vaccine doses available for use in the US population to immunise about 20 million individuals in the month of December.
6 weeks on, as December ends, America's COVID vaccinations have just crossed 2 million.
If he continues to move as it is now, it's going to take years, not months, to vaccinate the American people. It would take ramping up 5 to 6 times the current pace to 1 million shots a day.
The task? To protect a nation of 330 million. Joe Biden says he will move heaven and earth to ramp up vaccinations.
This is going to be the greatest operational challenge we've ever faced as a nation.
And this is a viral tsunami that we are now experiencing.
Hard-hit California is extending its stay-at-home orders as Colorado contact tracers scramble to identify where a man in his 20s picked up the first US case of the United Kingdom coronavirus variant. They say the man has no history of recent travel.
Harry and Meghan are back at work in a new job, but they're not alone. The couple hosted the first episode of their new Spotify podcast with a very special guest, baby Archie.
Archie, is it fun? Fun. Fun.
After me. Ready? Happy?
Happy? New?
New?
New.
That's the first time the young Sussex has been heard in public. Other guests for the debut episode include Sir Elton John. Harry and Meghan are also working on producing content for streaming giant Netflix. Still to come on 7 News, how's this for a scenic flight? See a pilot's perfect sand landing up next. Plus, saved by sepia, the owner who saved his best mate. Don't miss that story ahead. And it is 21 degrees in Bondi. We'll have Sydney's New Year's forecast soon. After being banned from the sky for close to 2 years, Boeing's grounded 737 MAX has resumed passenger flights in the US. Flight 718 departed Miami, bound for New York. Most passengers on board say they didn't bat an eyelid when they found out what they were flying on. The 737 MAX was grounded last year after 2 fatal crashes in 5 months. American Airlines is the third global carrier to resume flying the plane. And a pilot's pulled off a perfect landing on sand. He put his Cessna down on a virtually empty stretch of beach in Florida, managing to come out unhurt and with no damage to the plane. What led to his picturesque landing is under investigation. The newsroom is working on all of today's major stories for the 6 p.m. news. Michael Usher joins me now.
Yeah.
Michael, what's coming up?
Hello there, Ange. Well, major developments as you've been reporting on the COVID front this evening. A new cluster has emerged, this time in Sydney's inner west, and authorities say the 6 cases identified there will surely rise. Tonight, cases rising also in Wollongong and huge lines for testing. On the harbour, barricades are up, the fireworks lockout has begun. New rules for New Year's, details about the restrictions coming into force right across Sydney. We'll tell you all of those. Exclusive video for Maryland, a driver on the run, the string of accidents he caused. Another quake has rocked Croatia, this time more powerful, the dramatic rescues from the rubble. Also tonight, the boat he found clinging to a navigation beacon, what happened to his vessel and his best friend. Plus the worrying numbers of Aussies struggling to pay for the essentials. We'll have the tips on how you can cut back and get by. And Harry and Meghan have released their first podcast. So what did the Larchie have to say? We'll show you all of that. Now, Ange, because you haven't worked hard enough today, how about we make it a date at 6 o'clock? Do you want to come back? We'll do the news together. 7 News at 6. What do you think?
I will see you at the desk. I'll just shuffle a bit along. Thanks, Michael.
Slide across. We'll see you then. Thanks, Ange.
Thanks, mate. A seaside town in France has turned white. But it's not winter snow. That's sea foam blanketing the streets along the waterfront after a storm. The foam was produced by rough seas and picked up and spread across town by fierce winds. Locals say the foam seemed to fall like snowflakes. It is 4:51. Let's get a check on Sydney's traffic. They say dogs are a man's best friend, but this next man has repaid the loyalty in spades. His pup, named Cheeky, was pulled lifeless from the backyard pool, but saved by CPR performed by his loving owner.
We know about the dangers of backyard pools for children, but on Christmas Eve, the Gale family almost lost their beloved Pooch when she fell into the water and couldn't get out.
Chicky's alive to tell the tale thanks to her quick-thinking owner. Kristen Gale says he'll never forget the moment he pulled the curious chihuahua across from the pool, fearing it was too late.
Her tongue was quite dark and blue and her eyes and stuff were very lifeless, and her belly was extremely large and full of water, I suppose, but I just thought, and she was unconscious, and I just thought, well, we have to try.
It was just a worse nightmare, and I honestly didn't think there was any hope.
Without giving it a second thought, Kristen began performing mouth-to-mouth on the pup.
Never done CPR on anyone or anything before, and I just thought, well, it works on humans, surely it can work on a dog.
Amazingly, it did. After 10 frantic minutes, there were signs of life. But vets say if he'd found Chicky even seconds later, she wouldn't have made it.
Unfortunately, we often see them when it's not a happy outcome, and owners don't get to them as quickly as what Chicky's owners have been managed to do.
Vets warn as we spend more time outdoors this summer, our pets are at greater risk of drowning. We're being urged to keep a close eye on our four-legged friends around all bodies of water, and if they fall in, pull them out and call a vet immediately.
What a legend. Good on him. Next in 7's afternoon news, your latest weather forecast, including what to expect as we finally say goodbye to 2020.
First to break it.
You've got news on those who were missing.
First again.
The fire has been burning over 3 hours.
If you want to be the first to know.
Major breaking news.
The news breaks here first.
A Boxing Day bash erupts into a brawl.
If it happens.
A trail of destruction across Western Sydney.
It's on 7 News.
A Mexican zoo has cause for celebration as this baby hippo made a rare appearance. The youngster was born in July, but was only given a small chance to live because his mother had trouble feeding him. But thanks to the hard work of zookeepers, the little hippo is now out of danger and thriving. He's beginning to eat solid foods, and his favourite meal is hydroponic grass. Time now for a look at Sydney's weather, and we reached a top of 24 degrees in the city, hitting the mild high just around lunchtime today. Looking ahead across the capital cities, and there's a little cloud around for the final day of 2020. It'll be 22 degrees and partly cloudy in Melbourne, 28 degrees with cloud cover also for Brisbane. Perth will be sunny with a top of 32 degrees there. Back home to Sydney and the important forecast for Sydney's New Year's Eve. Not a bad one to stay home, in fact. The forecast looks a little wet. Showers around, reaching a mild 24 degrees. The first week of 2021 in Sydney looks pretty overcast but is heating up. We'll reach 28 degrees by Sunday in the city, 31 degrees in the west. And that is Sydney's 4 p.m. news for this Wednesday. I'll be back with Michael Usher for 6 o'clock news, including the very latest developments on Sydney's new COVID outbreak and what it means for your New Year's Eve. Stay with 7 now for The Chase Australia. See you soon.